Hello, please meet today's guest, Michael Krause.
Communication when you're teaming is the greatest risk and the greatest reward. And so if I look at everything that was right and amazing, and I think of like the Acquias and the Tabooties and things like that, it was because there was really, really good communication.
What does it take to go from building data systems in the Navy to riding a billion-dollar rocket ship at a company that helped launch Toast? And then walk away from all of it to bootstrap a SaaS startup with your wife and adult children. That's exactly what my guest did. Michael Krause spent decades in the trenches, from Microsoft's .NET framework team to building massive platforms for the federal government to running enterprise sales at Acquia, where he helped grow revenue from a few million to over 200 million. He's seen the perfect storm of right team, right tech, and right timing. But here's what makes this conversation different. Michael's now doing something most founders never attempt. He's building a family business, literally. His wife, his sons, his daughters, each bringing professional level skills in architecture, engineering, marketing, and customer success. They launched their AI-powered SaaS product, Scorm Bench, last August, and they're already in procurement with the U.S. Navy. In this episode, Michael shares what he learned from explosive growth at Acquia, why he wishes he'd gone solo decades earlier, and the surprising lesson about communication that separates winning teams from those that crash and burn. Let's get into it. Hello, Michael, and welcome to the podcast.
Morning, Jothy. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I always start this way, which is a context-setting question. Where are you originally from, and where do you live now?
Wow, it's a great question. I was born in Los Angeles. My dad was a California Highway Patrolman motorcycle policeman when I was born and really
Didn't they
growing up.
call those chips?
They did. CHP chips. He would be the Poncherello of the John and Ponch, for those that are old enough to know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And I was actually born at the UCLA campus hospital. That's where his insurance benefits were. And that's where I arrived in deep fog in the middle of the night one time. And then now I'm in Boise, Idaho. The family actually eventually relocated to Idaho. And in between then and now, I've traveled the world and spent a good amount of time in DC doing civilian contractor work out of the Pentagon. So it's been kind of a mobile journey the whole time.
That's great. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of your career progression, but especially focused on startups? And you were just telling me before we came on the air that you've fallen in love with tech. So definitely want to hear something about some of those startups.
Sure. Yeah. So early on, Navy veteran, and was exposed to some technologies in the late 80s, early 90s through the Navy, which by today's standards are like, rocks and sticks, of course. But early
Right.
stage, it was fascinating to me to work with some of the communications and signaling systems and antenna-based systems that were around in those days. That would grow. I did some entrepreneurial things in my early 20s. And actually, weirdly, through a severe head injury and a car accident, I discovered a passion for technology that led me to a computer science degree. I was eventually recruited by Microsoft and really haven't looked back. I was part of the .NET framework team from design and architecture through just prior to version 4, and then took all that technology passion and love back into the state of Oregon college systems and worked through all their colleges, both integrating, revamping their technologies, did that for 3 years, then pulled into the federal space where we were building these massive platforms for federal government, loved the experience, and through a mentorship with a company out of Boston, a company named Acquia, I would eventually be recruited into that company as it was experiencing tremendous growth, and would travel the world for that company, ran all their enterprise business from leads to subscription renewals. I would take them from a few million a year in revenue on their enterprise business and then globally build, almost 200 clients and over 200 million in annual revenue, and just experience that hockey stick, rocket ship growth through that experience. And then when I exited that, started Dark Yeti, which is a company that exists today. It's my consulting company. My wife and I do investments in startups, We've had a number of projects over the years where we were partnered, co-founded, invested, and probably similar to your background there, where I'm both investor, founder, operator, sometimes technology builder, driving all these different things and spinning all the plates. And then recently, as I exited our last project, which was TabootyLMS.com, we launched our own product, our own SaaS product, AI SaaS product in August called Scorm Bench. And so this is really our first solo where we're the solo investor. We're sort of bootstrapping it. And it's been a very, very exciting ride. And I can't see a retirement in the future. All I can see is more tech and more opportunities as we continue to scale these things. But that's my 30,000 foot.
So you said that word quickly. Say it slowly. Storm bench.
Scorm. So it's a play on in the early 2000s, actually right around 2000, the federal government created a portability policy around education courses online. At the time, there was just a few learning management systems, and they didn't want vendor lock-in. So it's spread now for decades, and it's a standardization of packaging, sort of a remote HTML, JavaScript, CSS package of files as a zip that can then be ported between any online platform. So these courses are now truly portable, and there's all kinds of variations of the original Scorm, AICC, XAPI, even JSON packaging for modern courses. And so our tool basically takes those packages before you launch to students. It validates all the different aspects of it, whether it's performance, how many concurrent users, also scoring around content and scoring around objectivity. Is it actually hitting the source of what it's supposed to be training? And so we provide this sort of trifecta of scoring and performance prior to launch to ensure that it's going to work in the wild. And it's been currently well received by Navy, and we're in procurement processes with them currently.
Okay, so I get it. Get the connection to scoring.
Yes, and that's an acronym for the original package zip file. So think of it like a test bench where you're going to put a course and you're going
Okay.
to test all these things, score all these things, and with a high level of confidence and even certification, you can launch these with predictability. Whereas today, there's no automation, there's no tool that can tell you that if you put 100 students on it concurrently, it's going to work. And in a lot of cases, they don't work. And so there's an industry practice of rolling out to very, very tiny audiences. Even like the Navy has 600,000 sailors, over 150,000 courses, and they spend all their resources just micro adjusting these tiny audiences at a time. And they're falling further and further behind on their compliance testing because the system just doesn't support it. So we're trying to help them get that absolute performance out of those courses so they can roll it out to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands at a time and speed up their throughputs for compliance.
So right now, today, you're splitting your time, I guess, between the consulting, which is the dark Yeti. That's like Yeti, the monster in the.
That's right. Like Bigfoot, but the snow side.
Okay. And well, the other thing that's a Yeti is those, those big insulated cups.
That's right. We've had some interesting IP conversations with the group, and we're staying in our lane, but there has been some overlap there we've gone through with the USPTO and such, but all good
Right.
so far.
So anyway, you're splitting your time between the consulting company and this SaaS application that you and your wife are doing. Is she involved with you on both businesses?
Yeah. So basically, Dark Yeti has produced other products with partners and co-founders, and this is the first one where just Dark Yeti, my wife and I, and our actual family are building and investing in this together as a true family business. And so that's our experiment currently. My children have grown professionally to the point where I've got architect, engineer, customer executive success, at the executive level, as well as talent and marketing and sales. My wife has a master's in ed tech. So being an ed tech tool and in that industry and domain, she brings a wealth of value and information into sort of, not just the product build out, but engagement with prospects, market, and customers. So we've
So
got sort of this tuned family that just is just perfect for this capability, right? At this time.
okay, but what's going to happen when you discover that there's a really critical role that you need to fill, and you're kind of too old to have another kid?
It's true. It's true. So, and I think that's part of, finding success as I have is that I can build and assemble teams very, very quickly. And so, although I'm always interested in, W-2 co-founding, building other opportunities, I typically do a lot of micro consulting. So, where I have this itch to get involved in all these projects, I typically restrict myself at that level to micro slicing. So I'm on boards, and as a board member and advisor, I get to sort of play that out with those young teams. And so that's been very fulfilling. And then I think the other side is even building Scorm Bench and Dark Yeti, the family and others are helping scale that. And so where I get to play quarterback and probably more sideline coach more and more these days, there's a very capable young generation team that's being built and scaling simultaneously. So we're really ready in the stages of scale. We've got people kind of handpicked out there that will be recruiting as we hit each stage of growth. And some of those are even joining us now as consultants and contractors and advisors that are helping, whether it's growth, marketing, sales, or even technical. We've handpicked through our experiences collectively who those individuals will be. And we're already selling them. So and this is something I picked up in government business is that you've got to be bench warming that next team the whole process. Even before we launched Scorm Bench in August, we were having conversations with the talent that we see coming on over the next year to 2 years to help us take this to the next level.
And is your family and your businesses, are they uh, all centered on Boise, Idaho, or are you virtual and spread out all over?
It's interesting. Our resources with the family are all here, but our partners, our clients, our businesses are global. I do a lot more business, I would say, East Coast and Europe than I do West Coast. And so it really is, we have the benefit of all the virtual capabilities today and with travel, right? Because I do believe in FaceTime and there's a lot of strategic value in getting FaceTime with the right people. And so I do spend some time on the road, but we are housed here and we have, a global impact. And so we don't have any local clients. I'd love some, but it just hasn't worked out today.
Well, I've been to Boise, Idaho, on my way to Sun Valley, and it's a small town. I mean,
It is. It's a right place to live and raise kids, but you do have to make accommodations for business. And a lot of us are, operate on a more coast to coast or global stage. And so you have to be a little comfortable with travel. I may have calls at 4 in the morning, and sometimes up until 10 or 11 at night. But managing that with flexibility is possible with a virtual world, and so we've really benefited from that capability.
well, when you look back over what you just described as sort of your career progression, is there anything that stands out as like the greatest win you had?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably quite a few, but one that stands out just because of the kind of the breakneck speed of it would have to be Acquia. I think that the right tech at the right time with top-notch players across industry. I mean, most of the people that I worked with, and the person I reported to was twofold. I reported to like the chief customer officer, Chris Comparato, and then Tom Erickson was our CEO. And the company was so incredibly skilled at selling and marketing and outreach, but also in raising money. Like it was just one of the machines that just phenomenal. As I kind of measure everything against, the capabilities of that team when I think about the other experiences and growth that I've gone through with other companies and startups. But Chris came from an exit, and when he exited Acquia, he went on and started Toast, and they went public in 2021. And so just I think the right team and the right funding and the right skill sets created this perfect storm, and I think that's what investors and SaaS entrepreneurs are looking for is how do we create or recreate some of these perfect storms that were true rocket ships and had the billion-dollar exits and had the explosive growth in controlled ways. And so I strive for that in my work, and I don't think that I've actually seen that level. We've come close to it on a few projects, but that's what I'd like to see in our own project, is that kind of explosive growth as we tune all the pieces in. And we think the product is very mature at this stage, but as we move into sales very cautiously, whereas other projects, we're just, knocking down every client possible. We're very strategically looking for the right early clients that are going to prove out our use case, versus some of the startups, it's like, hey, we got a contract, we're washing a car with our SaaS, kind of thing. And so we really are being methodical, taking all that experience and really what we want to see in the outcome. And we're not feeling a rush, but we're feeling an intensity to be intentional on every contact we make for this product. And it's been very rewarding. Like we're learning every step of the way. But that's that fine tuning. You're tuning your product and you're tuning the market and your sales motion all kind of simultaneously. And sometimes those get rushed and people hit walls 2, 3 years in, even post funding, they can hit walls. And we're really trying to avoid that with the lessons we've learned.
Sorry for the interruption, but in addition to the podcast, you might also be interested in the online program I've created for startup founders called Who Says You Can't Start Up? In it, I have tried to capture everything I've learned in the course of founding and running 9 startups over 37 years. It's 4 courses, each one about 15 video lessons, plus over 130 downloadable resources across all 4 courses. Each course individually is only $375. The QR code will take you where you can learn more. Now, back to the podcast. Did Acquia, is that the right way to say it? Acquia?
Mhm. Yeah.
They had an exit, right?
They did. Yeah. They exited in 2019, 1 point some billion. I think it was Vista. I'd have to go back and verify who that was. I exited in 2015. So I had other projects I wanted to dig into and run with, but seeing their continued growth and final exit was awesome. Like just kudos
Well,
to that team.
I have I've seen them because I'm in Boston.
Yeah, of course. You probably know some of the players. Underscore, which is Michael Skock, David Skock, the godfathers of SaaS and SaaS metrics. I don't know if you've crossed their
Well,
paths.
David Scott is at Matrix and Michael started Underscore.
That's right.
Yeah, I know them both very well.
Good people. Boston's like such a talented place. You're in a good spot.
Did you live here or did you?
I frequented there. In fact, one of the reasons I exited Acquia was because we were in Portland at the time. All my family's West Coast, and we'd been out on the East Coast for about 8 years. And there was a desire to have me relocate to continue to grow with the team, and I couldn't do that to family. So we broke up amicably, and I went on to start Dark Yeti and our other projects. But there is a homeness to Boston because I spent so much time there. Like every month I was there for days to weeks, for business and for meetings and offsites, and also launching off to Heathrow and the Europe trips that were happening so frequently. And yeah, Boston has a warm spot in my heart. Boston and DC, those are kind of where I spent probably the most of my career work side.
Well, we're not having any warm spots right now.
No.
This morning it was 8 degrees and we had fresh snow. And then this weekend we're supposed to get a foot of snow
Oh my
in one
goodness.
storm.
I've been stuck in Boston before and didn't get to go home. This some holidays a few times.
Okay, let's flip the last question around. So talk to me about either mistakes or just, lessons learned the hard way
Hmm.
in any of the companies where the startups where you were heavily involved or a founder or, both.
Yeah, I think again, there's probably more on this one than there was in the last one. There's a lot of mistakes and learning opportunities through the process, and as you know, most startups fail, and so there's lots of opportunity to learn. I think for me, it's kind of twofold. One is you gain confidence when you win. So when you go through successful exits and growth, you start to sort of build your playbook. And I've certainly built my playbook over the years. And I think that one of the things that I have to remind myself when I'm teaming, and most of my experiences have been teaming related, that they don't always share my playbook. So as confident and as passionate as I am about, we've got to do it this way, guys, I know it will work, there's still a negotiation and a compromise. And I think that in my experiences, I don't know that I dealt with those as well as I could have, and I also think that it's driven me to do this solo project to really test my playbook without interruptions, without disagreements, without, the feuding that can happen. And I had a partner in one of my recent projects, the founder of Tavuti, Troy, which was a brilliant guy, but he used to use this description of, you know, we're building things and we're leadership, we're the C-suite, we're the growth team, and we're supposed to, keep it smooth and calm and all that. But much like a duck, under the water, we're paddling like mad. There's so much activity. There's, countless hours where we were having sync ups as a leadership team almost daily, hour to 3 hours a night, dealing with all the challenges and changes that come with a growing company. I mean, we were doing rounds, every year to 18 months for a period, all the due diligence that goes with that. All the legal challenges with regarding to brand and IP and a growing team. So there's countless pieces moving around. And I think that for me, there was always a question of, gosh, if I could have executed my playbook, could I have been more successful? Could we have been more successful? And so I think for me, a takeaway is that, have confidence in the things that you're doing, but also realize that if you're a team, you've got to blend the playbook. So if I was to go back to my younger self, I would say present your playbook to the team early, immediately from the beginning, and work through a blended playbook where everybody's operating together in unity versus trying to drive your playbook through the conflicts or the challenges and not really communicating, have a plan, right? Because everybody has a plan. And so I think that in senior leadership, those become the biggest challenges is, are we really on the same page? Are we really doing things the same way, the right way, and communicating that? So I recognize that I need to be a better communicator in a team scenario, bringing the playbook, working for that compromised blended solution for driving the business. And then also for me now testing my playbook without any other interference. And I've got advisors both involved, but as well that are outside that have similar experiences to you, whether they're heavy on the investment track or the entrepreneurial track, that can bring a wealth of wisdom into it. And so getting that feedback is going to help me stay on track too. But that's mine. Is you got to be a team player. Even if you're a solo founder, you still got to be a team player. I still have to negotiate with my head of product, who happens to be my youngest son, because he is adamant about his architecture and technology solution. And so there is a level of negotiations and compromise that are in every effort if it's going to succeed. And that's my big takeaway is making sure that at the very, very onset of these opportunities that you bring that awareness and willingness to really work through it together. That's the hard stuff.
So when you're having an argument or disagreement or whatever with him, your son, you don't ever say, um, "Hey, I'm your father."
No. In fact, if I ever say that, it's to reset that, hey, I believe I want you to succeed. I'm coming from it with a good intent. Don't take this as pure criticism. But it's that level, right, where they're all adults. They have successful careers. They're bringing their own weight and value to the scenario that without, we wouldn't be doing this, right? It works because all the parts and all the players and all the co-investment is happening. I get the privilege of being able to share my thoughts and ideas and to negotiate those things. And I'm sure I get away with stuff because there's, a lot of mutual respect there. But I have to lead with respect. If I don't respect my co-founders and if I don't value what they bring to the table in every aspect, right? And we all come with different strengths. And it's as important as Isaiah to say, hey, I respect that you're, you know, a computer science architect, engineer, and you get it, Dad. You get it, right? He gives me that benefit. But he also is in the last 8 years on the breaking edge of technology, neck deep in code, in stacks, in backend systems. And I have to trust that he's doing the research at a level that I could not dream of doing today, right? And so that mutual trust and value goes a long ways. But we are sometimes speaking, me from sort of a business executive level, marketing level, and him speaking from an engineering level. And how do we find the part where these fit together? But the wrestling of that is what makes a great product and a great opportunity, I think.
Well, what's the thing that you just described, some of the challenges. So what's the one thing you would do differently?
Wow. I would exercise a solo trip much earlier in my career. I think that I what either wasn't confident or didn't slow down enough to really consider it. But I think that I missed opportunities to do something that was purely mine, right? Early. So that's a definite change. I would tell myself, don't wait. Do your thing earlier. You can, right? And I've learned through the years how to do that. And that's why the children right now are doing so exceptionally, because they're getting to start earlier, decades earlier than I really did on my own. And I think the other is that I needed to communicate. I still think that communication when you're teaming is the greatest risk and the greatest reward. And so if I look at everything that was right and amazing, and I think of like the Acquias and the Tabooties and things like that, it was because there was really, really good communication. And if I think of the challenges where there was pain or conflict or different focuses, it was the lack of communication. So there is something about being united and transparent in the communication process, because you can solve a lot if you're willing to put it on the table with people and be respectful. But yeah, I think starting earlier, I think there was a hesitancy, and some of that's, you married kids and you want to provide, and there's a lot of financial risk. So I think I was always hesitant earlier, and it was easier to team. I'll put some of mine and we'll put a bunch of yours and we'll do this. But I also then wasn't getting but a minor reward when things went really well. So there's that payoff too, is like, if I invest this much, I exit in 5 or 6 years, what's the reward and payout for that sacrifice? And sometimes it was like, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe it worked out like that. But other times it was like, if I calculate it down to the hours spent, I didn't do too well. And I think we've all, especially on the tech side, I think a lot of technology professionals and talent that get involved in startups, they're not always well represented. And that's something I've witnessed as a player that wasn't on the technology side. And a lot of the last, 10, 15 years, somebody else was building the tech and noticing that they don't always get a good chunk of the reward. And some of the systems are built for that purpose. And you see a lot more technology leaders founding companies to ensure, that I'm going to get my piece out of this. I'm going to be the builder and operator, and I'm going to do this thing, which is some of my motivation right now too, is that I've got all this energy to do some more, and I want to do it on my terms.
Go back to that earlier self that you're trying to give some advice to about jump in with both feet. But what I want to hear also is, so what's the world changing idea that you would have, if you had more confidence, to use your description of sort of the barrier for you? Did you have an idea? I mean, I'm just trying to get into the mindset of, okay, yes, it's great to start something on your terms. In order to be successful, you have to have an idea that will change the world in some market, with some product or service. Do you know what it would have been, or is it too much in the cloud, the fog of the past?
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right, and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show.
I definitely generate ideas. Like I had hundreds of ideas in my, earlier days as I was moving into technology. I was solving some of it. I was doing websites and I was doing integrations of things in the 90s when it was not supposed to be able to happen. And I did a lot of back end code in C and C++, really building a data back end, which is why Microsoft recruited me in the first place, was that, hey, you're operating outside the box. You're not delivering the typical, HTML page or back end desktop application. I was building data architecture structures so that the front ends, wherever they were, would benefit from having a collection of data that was unheard of at the time. Uh, One of the solutions that we built in the late 90s in the state of Oregon, while I was still a student, we basically created crosswalks to 26 different universities. Some were on Sybase, some Oracle, some Microsoft, like divergent data stacks. And we were able to build crosswalks that ran for another 10 years. I mean, this stuff was running past 2010 when they began to do more consolidations on data and systems across the state, but 26 different solutions being able to have reciprocity. So a student could say, hey, I started at the community college and I'm going to go to OSU, and all their credits magically work. And they're already in the registration with what they have and where they need to go. And so at the time, as silly as it sounds, like we were interviewed on television, for the state of Oregon, like, hey, check out these guys. They did this weird, crazy thing, and nobody really knew what we did because nobody really understood it back then. But those kinds of things I was thinking about all the time, and there was countless opportunities to say, hey, I can do this and make this so much easier. One of them was one of the earliest integrations between multiple listing services for real estate and John L. Scott websites. And so I built that in like an 8-hour session on a Saturday as a consulting contract. And they're like, here's $5,000. That's crazy. I can't believe all the houses are showing up when I turn the page on. And it's crazy. I can search for real estate on my website now, and I'm not in the MLS system anymore. And so those early backend integrations were what made me attractive. Companies like Microsoft, and eventually the federal government was very interested in doing those kinds of things. But integration of devices and objects and analysis from that perspective, and bringing that to a forefront from a red forces, blue forces, and force capabilities and risk perspective. And so it evolved. But even at the very beginning, thinking about building card games and converting board games to digital and doing those little projects left and right. I had stacks of applications I was, throwing together on nights and weekends, but didn't take them anywhere. So it's like, it was for a while there, it was like, hey, I built that. And they just made $8 million on, the first marketplace for Apple iPhone. Like, what the heck? Why didn't I push that out when I should have, And maybe you've seen that too, where it's like I was playing with that, and that guy, wow, I had a lot of that early on in my career. And so yeah, I think
we all,
about that opportunity lost.
it may not be completely lost, because sometimes, let's say one of us had the idea for the first iPhone,
Mhm.
but without the marketing power of an Apple, it wasn't going to go anywhere.
No.
Maybe a better example, the iPod. Okay, so they
Mhm.
launched the iPod with the slogan, 1,000 songs in your pocket. And it took off like crazy, right? And the Sony Walkman was the competition.
Mhm.
Well, a startup couldn't have done that. I mean, startups have a lot of trouble, I think, in consumer branding, because
Yeah.
it takes so much money. And so a lot of things that I saw big companies do, and it's like, wow, we could, I mean, usually I'm downplaying the advantages of big companies, because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they fundamentally can't make decisions as fast, and they can't move as fast as a startup. But when it comes to pushing something out into the market, if you can at least, as a startup, if you can at least partner with somebody that has that kind of oomph, that would be really helpful. Whenever I meet and talk to startup founders on this podcast or anywhere, we all see that startup people have to have grit or they couldn't do what they're doing. I like to think of grit as being described by words like resilience and fortitude and drive, determination, stick-to-itiveness, and most of all, courage. And normally I would say to my guest, I would say you, but in your case, I have to say you and your whole family have got to have a lot of grit. And there's got to be an interesting story about where that comes from.
I mentioned earlier that I've had a very mobile career. I've traveled the world and back and forth across the U.S. countless times, and the family was actually something that I was never willing to sacrifice. My wife and I were very passionate about, hey, wherever we go, we're going to go together. And that started at the very beginning. And so interestingly enough, our children, I think our youngest was 6 or 7, all had passports, and they traveled internationally, and they've traveled all over the US with my projects and my experiences and my consulting. And it's given them, and they were homeschooled as a result, because my wife wanted to be able to pivot and go when I could go. And so school became portable and education became portable. All of our children graduated early. They all had full ride academic based scholarships early on in their college experiences. And they are lifelong learners. I think I've got grit for different reasons. I had a more difficult childhood, spent some time on the streets as a kid, was an athlete, but also an athlete in between classes, defending myself and on the street. So I think I get grit from sort of more of a classic upbringing where, life requires it. Whereas I think there was a freedom and a faith component for my wife and my children, that their passion for truth and experience and learning and different cultures has given them such a unique take on life. Now they have kids. I shared before when we talked, I've got 10 grandkids, I've got 8 under 6. So we're in the prime, grandbaby harvesting season right now, which is super fun and fantastic. And I think that I'm seeing that amazing, resilience, but also from a point of passion in learning and discovering new things in all of them. They're all like professional level writers. They've got novels. I shared before that, my daughter published a book on Amazon this year as an experiment. She has more planned. They're all were trained in technology early on. Grade school level, they were programming. They have a grasp of math, at least from a financials perspective, if not more. And so we have these amazing, capable kids. They were raised in environments where, at our home, we hosted large corporate meetings at times, especially in Portland. And here we've got a house full of teenagers, and we've got 60, 70, professionals, in the house, networking and hanging out. And the kids were involved. Like they didn't excuse themselves to go play video games. They were engaging, my colleagues and my peers at a very deep level, and curious about business and curious about, oh, you're from New Zealand and you do business there. What's that like? What is your model of business and what is your product like? And they were very curious. And my wife was amazing at bringing that out in them. But I think there's different sources, like you said, that create that kind of resiliency. And it's not just, hard knocks. It made me tough, made me fight, some of it's out of a beautiful faith and a beautiful passion for curiosity that I think brings a lot of innovation and strength into our world. And I see it in the kids. It's absolutely humbling to see it.
I feel like you're about to open the side door and bring them all in on camera.
They're not here. I wish I could. They're all doing their own things right now this morning, but that would be awesome. Bring the whole family in. And there's a little clip about each of them on our Scorm Bench site, because we really promote Scorm Bench as a family-owned business. And so you'll get a headshot and a little bio on them. Like my youngest daughter, Brina, that did the book, she also started a talent company last year called Talent Drift. So they're all just, busy doing. I have to fight for their resources and attention, but that curiosity brings them back. It's like, yeah, we want to be part of this. We're excited about what you're doing. So it's a team.
And don't forget to mention that they might be busy raising 10 kids.
Yeah, and I get to help, right? So there's days where they're like, "Hey, I need a day." So and pop up. Here's the pile. Have fun, and we'll take it. We'll take it. It's the best interruption there is.
Great stories. And I think you've said a bunch of wonderful things that our audience will benefit from. So I want to thank you for being part of this.
And thank you for having me. It's good to be able to share where I'm at.
Now, here are your 3 toolkit takeaways from today's conversation with Michael Krause. Toolkit number 1, bench warm your next team before you need them. Michael learned this in government contracting, and it served him ever since. Before Scorm Bench even launched, he was having conversations with the talent he'd recruit over the next 1 to 2 years. Don't wait until you're desperate to start building relationships with the people who will help you scale. Toolkit number 2, communication is both your greatest risk and your greatest reward. When Michael looks back at everything that went right, at Acquia, at Tabooty, it was because of exceptional communication. And every painful experience, lack of communication. If you're willing to put issues on the table respectfully, you can solve almost anything. Toolkit number 3, don't wait. Do your thing earlier than you think you should. Michael's one regret, not going solo sooner. He had hundreds of ideas, but held back due to fear and financial risk. His advice to his younger self and to you, you can do this. Start earlier. The reward only comes when you're willing to take the risk on yourself. Now, go identify one person you want on your future team and start that relationship today before you need them. And that is our show with Michael. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying TTFN, ta-ta for now.